Root user. This account would have full access to all services and resources. That includes your billing information, personal data, entire architecture and its components. See, this root user has got unlimited power, extreme power. It cannot be limited. So you must not use it, because if the account credentials of root user is hacked, you are gone. So what to do instead? If I don't have to use root user, what should I do? We should find a safer way to administer. So in place of this root user, I can work with one of the AWS service, IAM, Identity and Access Management, using which I can create a new IAM admin user. Once I do that, I can lock away the root user credential, and then for any other purposes, I would just be using this IAM admin user instead of this root user. But what is IAM? One thing that you need to remember is yes, everybody wants to rule the world, right? But being an administrator, you should be able to restrict the access granularly. If anybody is coming from the dev environment, test environment, or web, their permissions should be provided with the principle of POLAP. Now, what is POLAP here is principle of least access privilege. That is, need to have authorization, right? That is what we have got. That is need to have authorization. With need to have authorization, we are only providing our users with the permissions that they need to perform the task, not the additional permissions, such that if someone requires the permission to read a file, we only provide read access, don't give full access. So here in AWS, we have this service, which is IAM, Identity and Access Management, using which you can create users, you can create groups. To authorize them, you can have IAM policy, and you can even have roles for temporary access. Now, one thing to notice is yesterday we worked with services like VPC, EC2. Both of these are regional services. But today, when I take you to this service, which is IAM, Identity and Access Management, this service requires no region selection, because this is a global service. As you can see, no region selection required. It is a global service. So IAM is a global service using which you can manage the authentication, authorization, you can create users, groups, you can attach policies with these user groups and roles. The benefit of IAM is it integrates with all the other AWS services, provides you federated identity management. Now, when I say federated, users who are not having AWS account, they can also log into your applications. Think of providing them access using their Facebook account, Google account, or they can log in with their Amazon.com IDs and so on. Also with SAML, that is on-premises Active Directory accounts. So we can have secure access for applications, and we can give granular permissions to each entity. When we start working with IAM, we have got these four main principles. An IAM user, just like an end user who would be accessing AWS. Federated users, users coming from the outside, not having AWS account. IAM role, one way in AWS to allow external entities, to allow federated access, we have to create IAM roles, and we can have various identity providers. Let's start the discussion of these principles one by one. So first, we can have IAM users. So what is a user? It will be a user within your account. Remember, they are not separate accounts. They would be just users within your account. If anybody has to join, you can quickly admit them. Yep. Each user would have their own credentials. Now, depending on whether you want to give this user the GUI access. GUI means the console access that we have here, the AWS console, or you want to provide this user with programmatic access, which includes access through CLI, software development kits, or PowerShell, or maybe other query API. So if you want to provide that, you can provide it. IAM users should be authorized to perform some actions for which I can attach IAM policies to my IAM users. When we start creating IAM users, the users would have no default permissions. The access to console or CLI must be explicitly granted. Now, let me show you all of these one by one. I would be quickly creating a user. I would say let's add a user. I would be saying this user as, let's say, test user. I would give this user the programmatic access. Programmatic access means API, CLI, software development kits, which includes Eclipse, PowerShell, PyCharm, Visual Studio based access. For this type of access, user would require access key ID and secret access key like username and password. In case of password, in case of console based access, if you want to provide, users would require along with this username a password. So I can just leave it auto generated. So we were able to work on this one. Next, if you want to allow your user to perform some actions, we have to then work with IAM policy. So in IAM policy, it is a JSON document, a document in which you write what all permissions you want to grant to your users. IAM policy control access to AWS services. These JSON document permissions are evaluated at the time of request. One thing to note here is that IAM as a service has got no visibility above the hypervisor. Now, how is IAM permissions calculated? Now remember, yesterday we discussed about NACLs, Network Access Control List, which works on rule books. In that point, that works on the rule number, even if there is a deny or allow. But in case of IAM, it looks for the explicit deny first. If there is any explicit deny for anything, the result would be deny. Deny always overrides allow in case of IAM permission. It will then check if there is any allow. If it is allowed, the answer would be allow. Otherwise, it is always a deny. So that is one thing that we can learn here, the difference between NACL and IAM permissions. Deny would be always overriding any allow that we can have. Next is how can we grant permissions using policy? So we can have two main type of policy, resource based policy. So these JSON documents which you are assigning to various resources, if I assign my policies to resources like S3 bucket, KMS, key management service, or if I assign this to Glacier vaults, if I assign policies to these, they are termed as resource based. If I attach these policy to identities like users, groups, or roles, they would be termed as identity based.